So this is a game that certain team members have been really looking forward to. Vampire, the Masquerade, Bloodlines 2 came out recently. We've got hold of some review code. I'm not sure we're going to have the bandwidth to actually accommodate a full review, but Oliver, you have taken a look at it, right?
Yeah, I have.
Right.
Oliver.
Okay.
That doesn't sound good.
So I have pretty mixed feelings about this for some reasons that will become clear, I think. But just on the visual front, it's UE5, and it looks like it's Lumen, Nanite, VSM, the classics, all the classics.
Right.
So I think there are some...
Greatest hits.
Yeah, so like the lighting looks pretty good in a lot of scenarios, I think. In scenarios where other games maybe don't look so good, like in this hallway here. There's this enemy flashlight, and he's lighting up the hallway with this indirect bounce light, and there's a bit of a lag to it, but it looks pretty cool. We see that in some UE5 titles like Chronos, that kind of nice bounce light there. There's lumen reflections here as well, though interestingly, they're mirror sharp quite often, which is probably not a best practice for lumen reflections, especially considering this game uses software lumen. So they look very blobby and indistinct, and they don't really match the scene. Like the kind of
Mr. Blobby.
Yeah. They don't really match it so well. So like oftentimes in UE5 games, you might see like a mirror, but the surface of the mirror will be very pockmarked and gritty, and you'll only get this kind of like very rough reflection of the scene. And that's not the case here. You see a lot of very mirror sharp reflections. But it does have a lot of visual weaknesses as well. Like dialogue scenes are something that really landed with me, that really stuck with me in a negative way. They're very basic. They have very minimal animation beyond the face. Now, if you go back to Bloodlines 1, I'm not going to say the lip sync was like the best in the world. Obviously, that was like a 2004 game. They were working with the early versions of the Source engine. It was not the best environment for creating expressive actors, but they did have interesting scene compositions, and they did have interesting body poses, and they were doing all kinds of interesting things. In this game, it really is just like you have a little bit of lip movement and not so much expression in the body, not so much excitement there. It looks kind of very just disappointing and a little bit sedate, I would say. And yeah, the production values, I think in those sequences, you really do feel like the game is not being produced to a very high level of quality necessarily in those sequences. The other issue visually with this game, like it looks fine. It looks decent enough for a UE5 title. I'm not expecting the world here. Obviously, this game has had a very tumultuous development history. It was developed by Hardsuit Labs, I think it was, a company a number of years ago. Development was switched over to the Chinese room, I think, in 2022. It was switched from a cross-generation title that used UE4 to a current generation only title that used UE5, so I'm not expecting miracles in terms of the graphics, and they generally look fine, at least from my limited playthrough. Performance is pretty bad, though. Now, the interiors are basically fine, but you get out into the exterior, into the kind of the game's open world, which seems kind of like a fairly limited open world without a ton of stuff to do in it. But
it's like the original, right?
Yeah, the original had like pretty nice side quests and stuff, though it had some stuff to do. This seems a little bit more empty to me, but again, this is just provisionally based off a little bit of gameplay. But it's like really struggling to hold a stable 60 FPS. I'm playing on PlayStation 5 here in performance mode, and it's kind of like in the 40s, 50s. It's stuttering. It's just a really messy and uneven experience. Maybe if this game was shipping in 2021 or 2022, you excuse it because it's UE5, it's an open world-ish kind of title, but we've seen titles like Mafia recently deliver a mostly locked 60 FPS in an open world environment. We've seen titles like The Outer Worlds 2 deliver a mostly locked 60 FPS, at least on Xbox, in a pretty much open world environment in a very large set of environments there. So that's quite disappointing. And then just as a general matter, like as a game, it doesn't really feel anything like Bloodlines to me. The first problem comes right on boot. You have two options to start the game. You can pick a male or a female character with predefined facial structure, and that's it. No choice of clans, no skill points, no nothing. A lot of this game centers on a personality in your head called Fabian, who's like the second protagonist. You have no control over who they are, how they behave, their role in the story, just nothing. And that's important because in the first game, your choice of clan, Bruja, Tremere, Nosferatu, whatever, greatly affected your appearance. If you were Nosferatu, famously, you had to traverse the game mostly using the sewers because the non-vampire people would be terrified of you, terrified of your appearance. If you were Malkavian, huge parts of the game were rewritten because you were kind of insane, you were losing your mind as the game went on. And the more combat-focused specialties like Bruja or Tremere had like, blood magic or really strong hand-to-hand combat, really strong fist combat. Abilities that played a significant role in gameplay as well. Here you have like very minimal control over that kind of backstory. You awake as an elder vampire. You do have control over your clan. You are able to pick a clan later in the game, but it seems to just affect like a couple of combat abilities on timers. It's just nothing like the original. The action itself is very focused on melee combat. You have very limited abilities. Doesn't feel very good. Doesn't feel very much like Bloodlines 1. Now, Bloodlines 1 was janky in its own ways, so perhaps the combat there is not an exemplar of the genre, but it was very different than this game. And in general, you don't have very much flexibility in tackling objectives that I could see. It's a very linear kind of action game. So, as someone who played Bloodlines 1 a lot when I was like, 10 years old on my PC, on my first gaming PC, having a huge blast with it, even though it was like totally terrifying to me at the time, like the kind of Santa Monica manor and stuff. That was really
the manor,
really frightening, really frightening.
It was awesome.
I just think this deserved better. I'm really disappointed. Like, I don't think they need to make some massive open world RPG, but like something like a Deus Ex Human Revolution or Bloodlines 1 in scope, maybe a bit bigger with, maybe more polish put into it. Troika was famously very heavily burdened towards the end of the game's development. It shipped with a ton of bugs. There's obviously a very long-running unofficial fan patch to address a lot of the game's problems and restore a lot of unreleased content, unfinished content in the game that's kind of necessary to play the game in this day and age with any reasonable degree of quality. But yeah, just super disappointing to me. Like, I'm open to developers changing genre. I'm open to developers changing scope. But it feels like that original game was so iconic and it was so important to me personally that to see them come back with a game called Bloodlines 2 and it's basically just an action game, not a very good action game, with these performance problems, not really fulfilling the spirit or the scope of that original game in any meaningful way. It's just super disappointing to me. So I'm just really cold on this one.
Right. Okay.
Wow.
John.
Yeah, I haven't played it yet because I've heard some impressions and hearing from Oliver there. I'm also a huge fan of it. It was the first non-Valve Source Engine game. And it shipped just around the time of Half-Life 2, actually.
I think it was the very first Source Engine game because it shipped right before Half-Life 2, actually.
Yeah. Well, I think there was like Half-Life Source.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe, or CS Source or something was out. But either way, it was like the first original game on Source Engine then. That's cool. And yeah, I have very distinct memories of it. And this comes from, I was a big fan of immersive sims, of course, at the time. This was, just a few years after Deus Ex 1, System Shock 2, the Thief series, those types of games. I love those types of games. And Bloodlines ended up being one of those. The original take on Vampire the Masquerade, which was Redemption, was a very more traditional CRPG, but Bloodlines truly was like an amazing, very open-ended, immersive sim style game. And that seems to be what they were trying to make originally with this sequel before they switched developers. All those demos shown, and from what I understand, that was the goal, was to essentially do for this series what was done for, I guess, Eidos Montreal did for Deus Ex with Human Revolution. But it sounds like the version that was being made there was just a bunch of vertical slices. They didn't really have a way to get it finished, get it put together properly, and it was just a mess, apparently. No direct confirmation, just hearsay. But it when you hear those things, it starts to make sense why they would have changed developer. It's just a shame that the Chinese room is the one that was selected, because, not to knock what they've done great stuff, but they're not really well suited to that sort of game. And it seems like that's what they did not make. They made something else entirely that's not really true to what that was about, which makes you wonder then, like, why even bring back the name at that point, right? Like, the whole project just seems like a big failure from top to bottom. And looking at your footage here, like, even if you're on board with it, it seems to run horribly on the consoles. Like, it just does not look smooth at all.
Yeah, I mean, Alex isn't here this week, but those do look like some tremendous traversal stutters on that footage you've got there, Oliver.
Yeah, it's Oh, I mean, I would need to expand the frame time graph to see, and perhaps I will do that for the footage that we published here. But there are some big stutters. Looks like well over 100 milliseconds in the mix, plus just generally poor performance. Not very good.